Welcome to the 8th episode of Out of the Blue, the podcast, a platform dedicated to celebrating inspirational stories of people overcoming life-changing experiences who have found their way forward. I'm your host, Vernon West, and my co-host for today's episode is my son, Vernon West III, who, along with being a talented singer-songwriter with his first album available on Spotify, is also the artist responsible for our Out of the Blue logo and theme song. And I want to especially thank you, our listeners, for joining us today, giving us your precious time and attention, because we know just how valuable that is. In today's episode, we are honored to have Anthony Brown, author of his award-winning autobiography, From Park Bench to Park Ave, here today to tell us all about his amazing journey from homelessness and addiction to becoming a nurse practitioner and writing a book and dedicating his life to helping others struggling with the same problems. Hi, Anthony, and welcome to Out of the Blue, the podcast. So, Anthony, start off we always like to start with the big question. What brings you to Out of the Blue? How did it all begin?
In 1961, my mother gave birth to a child.
Okay.
Oh, you want me to start there?
No, not that way.
Okay.
You started it, but I think when you were homeless, I think that was when.
Yeah. Well, actually, it started before I was homeless
Okay.
because I come from an abusive background. I
Oh,
mean, I'm a child of the 60s, born of well, I was raised with a single mother, um, in the ghetto, no money, things of that nature. There's always booze in the house, and that's where I learned all of my social skills. You drink, fight, and everything's okay. And so at the age of 9, a tragedy occurred in my house. We found my mother. She got shot in the head, and she lived, but they never caught whoever did it. And so I got the opportunity to carry that resentment over whoever I thought did it.
Wow.
That combined with learning how to drink allowed me to learn how to use drugs to suppress all my feelings. And at the age of 14, because of the things that was going on at home, I ran away from home, joined a carnival until I was 18, quit school in the 8th grade. And so here I am, 18-year-old adult, running around in society with no skills, a serious anger problem, and major trust issues. And that's how I raised myself.
Well,
Now, in the midst of living that lifestyle comes all the byproducts of that. I became addicted to almost everything. I spent most of the 90s in prison. Um, and finally, at the age of 37, I got sober, discovered that the way I was living was wrong, which is kind of fascinating because when you live your life for so long one way and somebody tells you, well, that's not the right way, then your question is, well, what is the right way? And so I had to unlearn everything that I learned and relearn things I didn't know. And I got that from going through recovery. I got to do a lot of introspective work. But first, I had to remove that outside layer of the substance use and ineffective coping mechanisms that I've learned to live with. And so I end up a stranger in a strange land. I was raw and didn't know what to do and extremely sensitive with the propensity to want to go back to what I know because that's what I understand.
yeah.
And so early recovery was a challenge. I remember I had, I went to a program, learn how to stay sober, and I was good. I mean, I liked it, but being sober isn't all that it takes to change your life.
It's a good start, though.
Yeah, it's a good, oh, definitely. It's a necessity because if you're not in the right frame of mind, how can you do the right thinking?
Yeah. Definitely agree with that.
And so I learned that. And then as I was growing, I had to learn a lot of independent living skills. I didn't know how to work. I knew how to hustle, but I didn't know how to work.
Right. Big difference. Yeah.
A big difference. I had to learn to, no matter what I thought, maybe I'm lying to myself because I was always taught that might makes right. If I if I want you to understand what I'm saying, it's best heard with a sock in the mouth.
Okay.
I had to learn you can't do that. And so I had to learn how to not only develop a vocabulary, but learn how to articulate my message in a way that allows us to agree to disagree.
Yeah, that's a big deal, you know, that's an important thing to learn.
It is. And so that's how I'm living this new lifestyle. I'm learning this stuff. I'm going through some major growing pains. And then I was told that it's best that you educate yourself. So I taught myself how to read in prison.
Wow, that's amazing, really.
Yeah. And my first book I remember was a Louis L'Amour Western book.
No kidding. I
No
used to read a
kidding.
Western book to Vernon when he was young. You remember that book, Vernon? I wonder who wrote it because we totally got into it. It was really great. The
Hmm.
Louis L'Amour Western book. So go ahead.
The
Yeah. And
book
so I
we
thought,
read was called Westward Go. Sorry,
Oh,
continue.
that's good. Thank you for remembering that. Yeah.
okay. And so I went from Louis L'Amour to Daniel Steele, then Stephen King. But this is how I learned how to read.
Yeah.
And the words I didn't understand, then I wrote them down and got a dictionary and learned how to do that. And then finally one day I found a Bible in the trash can in prison. And I still have that Bible with me today.
That's
And
interesting.
this
That's
this
awesome.
occurred, Jesus, 20, probably almost 30 years ago. And so when I found this Bible, it was all covered with fluids and whatever else was in that trash can. And so it was super soggy. And what I did was I took this Bible to my cell and I peeled apart every page and dried it with the sunlight coming from my cell window.
That's determination. That is determination.
Yeah, and as I did it, I started reading it.
You know
And
what? I
so
gotta tell you, when you read something that you did that much work for to get to, I gotta say the reward must have been enhanced quite a bit.
it was profound
Yeah.
because all the times I've been to prison, I never had this kind of feelings. When I go to prison, it's like, okay, let me adapt to that lifestyle because I know what I have to do to survive in there. And then when I get out, I was still the same person.
Yeah.
This time, reading that Bible, something changed and I felt comfortable. And I even taught myself the 23rd Psalms by doing push-ups.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
because
love that song.
if I would mess up I give myself 50. I have to do a set of 50 push-ups, and if I messed up reciting the Psalms, I have to start all over again.
It's a good way to get a workout.
Yeah, it was great, workout for Jesus, and it was good, but a seed had been planted, and when I got out of prison that last time, I no longer felt that I wanted to live that lifestyle. But again, that's me being, you know, raw on the outs, but wanting to do something different. And that's when I learned the power of prayer and all of that stuff. And so I started getting my life in order. I got a job at a telemarketing place, which taught me how to accept rejection. And it's fascinating for me. I call God my higher power. I use those changes interchangeably, the Son, the Spirit,
So
and
do
everything.
I. I like that better myself.
Yeah.
I have a lot of trouble with the word God. I mean, I don't know why. Ever since I was a kid, it was something I couldn't really get my head around. So I like higher power. It fits my definition better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so me and my higher power, me and God, we established a really good bond. And so I'm out working telemarketing. I'm being this new person. I'm learning how to use my words instead of my fist. I'm learning how to, if somebody said something to me, that's your opinion. That's not a fact. It doesn't have to. It's just because it's your opinion doesn't mean it's a fact. It's just your opinion.
That's a big one
And I
too.
learned that if what is that saying? Opinions are like the circle in your bottom. Everybody's got it.
I was wondering how you're going to put that. Yeah,
Yeah,
they are
yeah,
like that. Everyone's got one.
yeah. Everyone's got one. They all stink.
Yeah, they all stink. I didn't hear that
And
part.
so I learned that, and I learned to accept people as being flawed, just as I was, because there's nobody perfect.
Right.
And so I have this new philosophy, this new way of life, and everything's going great. And then one day I went to the park where I used to, because I ended up sleeping in the park at the end. I mean, I was one of those homeless people that you see on TV, the dirty clothes, disheveled, hanging out in back alleys, drinking wine out of a brown paper bag. And I laugh, I tell people I was a connoisseur of fine grapes. And I like my grapes aged in brown paper sack.
Ah, that's
It,
mwah.
Yeah, yeah, and I drink only the most exquisite bouquet. That's Wild Irish Rose, Thunderbird mixed with Kool-Aid, and MD 2020. But I'm a classy connoisseur, and I won't drink wine out of a box.
You draw the line there. That's
Yeah,
different.
yeah, yeah. But I will smoke crack out of a car antenna.
Oh,
And
you gotta have your boundaries. You just you,
yeah, exactly. And so I changed from that lifestyle, and here I am. I have 2 years sober, and I went back to that park I used to sleep at, and I sat at that park, and that's when I I asked God. I mean, I believe if you want information, go right to the source. Don't beat around the bush. Just go. And so I sat at that bench, and I said, you know what, God? I know cars run on gas, and I know this bench is solid. I know this for a fact. Prove to me you exist, and I will do anything you want me to do. And I had such a profound experience that rocked me to the core of my belief.
Was it right then?
It
Like an
was then
immediate?
immediate.
Whoa.
What
What happened?
happened? What happened was, first of all, I believe God touches every one of us in a unique way that only we understand. That's
I
what
couldn't agree
makes it
more.
impactful. And right after I said that, I opened my eyes, and the trees above me were in 3D and they were pastel.
ooh,
And I looked down at the ground, and all these little animals came off the hillside, was surrounding my bench.
oh, this really happened?
And I was given, I felt this really comfort within myself. It was just a calmness that I still have today. And I was given three instructions. One, don't hurt anybody. Two, don't hate. And three, always finish what you start.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Those three. And I've lived with that now for 25 years.
Wow. That is
Now,
Wow. I
yeah,
have full chills. That's
it's
heavy.
yeah, yeah, it is. And the fascinating thing was since that day, I started picking up projects to do. I started going to school, studying to be a psychiatric technician. Now, mind you, here I am, a person on probation, a person on parole, barely able to make ends meet by working telemarketing. And I'm told to go to school with an eighth grade education. I got my GED in jail. And so I go to my first community college and I'm taking this psychiatric technician course and I pass the course.
That's great.
And then I applied to get my license to practice as a psychiatric technician. They gave me my license. And so I'm going to school doing this. I'm going to meetings. I am working in telemarketing. I'm staying sober. I'm doing everything. And the next thing you know, since I'm in school and I got my psych tech license, I ended up getting an associate science degree in psychiatric technology. And then
Wow.
I took up a couple more classes, and then I got associate in arts degree in general education. So now I have two degrees, you know, and
Wow.
I'm like, and I'm praying a lot. God is like my best friend.
Cool.
I mean, we're cool. We can talk about everything any way possible. That's just the kind of relationship I have with him.
Sure.
And so I'm doing all of this stuff, and I'm continuing going to school. And suddenly I start working at this treatment center. And so I'm at this treatment center. They allow me to live there. I'm living in sober living. I'm working in treatment. I'm not paying any rent. I'm going to school and everything's great. And so I decided that I'm gonna actually, when I was at the treatment center on my way to my parole office, the CEO of that treatment center just mentioned, "Hey, it'd be nice if we had a dual diagnosis program." And I'm like, "Okay, you want one?" She goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay." And so I started one and I finished it. And I created a dual diagnosis program for this treatment center that took care of mental health and substance abuse people.
That's impressive. That's awesome too. What a good
Yeah,
thing
I
to
mean
do.
it's gone because no matter what I pick up, once I pick something up, I have to finish it whether I like it or not.
I get you.
You know, it's great
Mhm.
for when I have a habit of just going to the theater just because I want to go, and whatever's playing at that moment, I'm going to watch it. I got to see a bunch of movies I never would have picked out. Never,
Mhm.
with different subtitles and, all these different foreign films. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. But once I sit down, I have to finish it.
That's right. Being obedient to that higher power.
Yeah, and I learned I just do the footwork and lay the results up to God. It doesn't matter what I think or feel,
Hmm.
just do it.
Mm.
That's it.
And so,
Wow, I can so relate to that because I just want to just interject a little bit. I really want to hear from you, but I just tell you that I relate so much to that whole experience about the quiet that came over you. Because the same thing happened to me after when I first moved into my home, after living my life with I had a rough childhood too. My father died from alcohol drinking, and he died at 42 when I was 17. So I was going against a lot of things in my mind about even buying a house. So when the day came that I finally got this house, and I had got it through a really miraculous thing. I mean, I don't want to waste too much time on it, but it was a miracle, a definite miracle. And I'm standing out there on the right near my sliders, looking out at my new backyard. And I said, God, I mean, high up, I was talking to God all the time. I still do. How do I ever thank you? What do I get for the God who has everything? Can I get you a tie? I mean, it's not going to happen, you know what I mean? So that all of a sudden everything got really quiet. You said that I knew exactly how you felt because everything got so quiet. I could hear a pin drop. And then I heard in my mind three little words, like as if they were written with the point of a common pen. It said, feed my sheep. And I said, for that on, I dedicated my life to everything I did was to feed a sheep. That's why this podcast exists. But so anyway, back to you, Anthony.
okay. And 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 so I'm going through this and I'm thanking God all the time. I mean, I pray a lot. I pray like twice a day, no matter what. I believe that for me, when I get up in the morning, I hit my knees before I hit my feet. That's
Love
just
it.
mandatory, you know. And then I have a chit chat with God. And then I sit down and I go over a list of, what am I grateful for? I'm grateful I can see. I'm grateful I can breathe. I'm grateful I have a blanket. I'm grateful I have batteries in my remote control so I don't have to get out of bed to turn on a TV. You
Right.
know,
There's so many things to be grateful for. You start thinking, listing them.
it is. And I've once heard that grateful people are happy people and those that aren't.
Absolutely. I read a book about that. A Jesuit did a research and he wrote a book. He researched happiness and he interviewed hundreds of people, rich people, poor people, happy rich people, miserable rich people. You know what I mean? Everything, each one. And he found that the only common denominator to happiness was gratitude.
Hmm.
If you didn't have
Yeah.
gratitude, you could not experience happiness.
Yep. And I believe that.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I go by, I'm a firm believer in just show me and I believe it. Well, God has shown me so much, so much. And so here I am working for this treatment center, developing this program, going to school. And at that point, I think I went to school to become a certified addiction treatment counselor. And so now I'm a psychiatric technician, I'm a certified addiction treatment counselor, and I finally got off parole and I decided I want to go to school to become a nurse. And so I went to school. I signed up for the RN program, and it was really interesting because I asked them if I finish this course and I know I'm going to get fingerprinted and they're going to come back with something, will you allow me to be a nurse? And they would say, well, we can't tell you that. You have to finish the course. And so I'm not necessarily in a dilemma, but I'm at a turning point. Do I invest my money and time and effort and go to school for nothing? Or do I just do it and leave the results up to God? So I went to the latter. I just did it.
Yep.
And sure enough, after I completed school, they told me that, well, we're sorry, we can't give you your nursing license. However, we could give it to you if we put you on probation and you take these urine tests and you're good for 3 years. Now, when they said that, I smiled. Why? I know probation. And so, okay. And I've been sober at that time probably 10 years. Like I could go to a meeting,
It's a
you know,
cakewalk at that point.
Yeah,
right.
you
Me and I,
trusted yourself.
yeah. And to give them a clean test, that's nothing. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I've been clean for 10 years. And so I got through that. And during that time period, somebody told me, they're like, you have a good story. You should write a book about it. I'm like, okay. And so I wrote a book with the intent of making maybe 100 copies and giving them to my friends, but God had another plan. And so I wrote the book, and somewhere somebody gave my book to Christine Devine from Fox News, and Christine was doing a show about the homeless people. And in doing her show, Dr. Drew Pinsky just happened to be at the studio, and he got my book. And then Christine calls me and she goes, Dr. Drew wants to meet you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so next thing I know, he's called, we're doing a podcast and he's saying, yeah, I really admire what you're doing. You're doing great out there. Everybody needs to hear your story. And I'm like, okay. And then things just like blew up. I'm like, well, and I'm sitting there going, God, you didn't tell me this stuff, you know.
Well, it doesn't have to tell you. Wonderful things are happening. That's all you have to know.
Right. Just do the footwork, finish what you start and leave the results alone. And so here I am doing all of this stuff. And I decided, okay, I want to go back to school to get my bachelor's degree. And so all of this is going on while I'm still going to school. I got my bachelor's degree and, you know, everything was great. And then I decided that, addiction can be a family disease.
Yeah.
My mother drank, I drank and used, all my brothers and sisters. And so, a lot of people don't come out of it. And I felt part of my amends was to help my family because I isolated from everybody when I was out there in my disease. And so I decided that, my brother needed some help. And so I bought this. He was living in a building that was abandoned. And I understand what it's like to live in abandoned buildings because I've been there and I've done that. And so I had a few extra coins and I said, okay, find out who owns that building and I'll buy it. Then you're no longer trespassing. But he couldn't do it. And so instead I bought another building, which turned out to be an abandoned 1916, 9,000 square foot mansion.
That's nice.
So, yeah,
Okay, good investment.
yeah, I mean, and it's back in Ohio, I'm learning there's a lot of abandoned buildings, a lot of old abandoned buildings. And so I bought this with hopes that my brother could take it over and things of that nature. And he was unable to do it. And so during this whole process, here I am in school getting my bachelor's, and I come up with a concept on how to write a brand new transitional program for homeless people. And so I wrote a program specifically designed for people that are homeless.
Wow.
Because homelessness isn't about just without a house.
Yeah.
There's a reason why somebody's homeless.
Definitely.
One thing I've done with my research is you see very, very few babies homeless. Because if a mother gives birth in the street, Child Protective Services will take the child and put it in some sort of shelter. And so it's like, okay, well, where does these people come from? And that's what I based all my analysis on and figured out a structured plan on how to transition people out of that. And so here it is. I have this empty building. I have this plan, but I'm in California. And everything's doing good, right? Just because you write a book don't mean you're a millionaire. Believe me, I am not a millionaire. But I talk to God all the time. And through one of our conversations, God told me it's his money, not mine. And I'm like, okay.
Okay.
And
That's a good one. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can't take it with you.
No, you can't.
Yeah. Huh.
I've never once seen a U-Haul trailer connected to a hearse. Never.
That's right. I think I heard there's an old saying about the richest man in the world at the time, J. Paul Getty. That someone asked him how much is enough, and he said a little bit more. And then they said, when he died, how much did he leave? And the answer was everything.
Right, right. Even the Egyptians tried by getting buried with it, and they just dug it up and put it in the museum.
Right.
And so when I heard that, I'm like, okay, if that's what I'm supposed to do, that's what I'm supposed to do. And so I'm sitting in California. By then, I start working on my master's. I'm a teacher at a community college. In the meantime, this house is sitting in Ohio. Nothing's happening. I'm 3,000 miles away, and I'm praying about it. And then that's when God says, well, just give up everything and go there. And I'm like, but, I'm living in California, God. I mean, I live in Orange County. God, I mean, the beach is right down the street, and I'm making like 6 digits a year. And it's like, and God's like, well, when you were homeless, how much money did you have? And I'm like, none, you know. And he goes, how much money was you born with? I'm like, none. And he's like, well, how much are you going to take with you when you die? I'm like, none. He goes, good, because it's all mine. Let it go. And I'm like, okay. And so I retired as a teacher and came out here to Ohio. I cashed out all of my 401k, everything, and put it towards that house on faith. And now I'm out here developing this program on faith. And it's really fascinating because no matter what happens, I have a heck of a story to tell.
Right? I mean, definitely, this is so inspiring, Anthony. I mean, I'm very inspired by this. I'm relating every level, right down to the cashing out my 401k to do like this podcast is what pretty much that to be doing everything I can to listen to what God is telling me, what my higher power wants me to do. And I feel like you're very inspiring. And I'm going to keep saying that. I'm sorry if it gets a little not monotonous, but it really is true. So tell us more about the place in Ohio.
Okay, I don't know if you can see it, but over here, that's a picture of the house.
I see it. Yes, we see it.
And that's Brown Manor. And it's all over the internet. And I've done interviews and all of that stuff because one thing I've learned that when you take an abandoned 1916 mansion that's been sitting there for a long time, a lot of work has to be done.
Oh yeah.
A lot. And I'm like, okay, God, when I first walked into that house, I went in the side door and the ceilings were falling down. There was mildew all over the place. I mean, you could literally hear the water dripping in the basement. There was a dry bat hanging off the light. And I'm like, oh Lord, And then I went to the hotel room and I prayed and I came back the next day and I seen the most beautifulest place on this entire planet. I mean, it has crystal glass windows, it has stained glass windows, it has 10 bedrooms. I mean, and it's like, okay, I'm ready, whatever you want me to do. And so I prayed about it. I moved out here because I sold my house in California. I was able to buy a house out here. And so now I have a permanent resident. I'm right down the street from Brown Manor. I'm using my bookshelves for it. I I had came to believe that one of the things I believe that if you're not moving forward, look at what's holding you back. That's really important. If there's anything you want to do in this life and you're not moving towards it, what's holding you back? What chain is holding you back?
Oh my
And
goodness. Say that one more time, just for posterity. If you're not moving forward,
if you're not moving forward, look and see what's holding you back. There's something you're chained to.
amen. That is so profound.
And I made some amazing discoveries, by writing and talking to God and listening to what's going on. I learned to let go of a lot of stuff because when we hang on to something, we don't have room to put nothing else in our hands.
Right.
So if you, and it just because you let go doesn't mean you have to release it. Letting go is just opening your hands up, and the whispers of God will blow it away if it's not supposed to be there.
Wonderful.
And I discovered that. And so part of my transition, like, okay, great, I'm sober, great, my life is moving forward. I'm doing okay in society, but there's still something there that I'm uncomfortable with. And I had to uncover, discover, and discard what it was in that closet. Like, for instance, I didn't like cooking, despised it. And I couldn't figure out why, you know? And when I look back at it, it all went back to me as being a little kid when my mother used to get drunk and she'd make me cook her scrambled eggs. If the eggs wasn't a certain consistency, she would throw the plate at me. I didn't realize that held me back from wanting to cook and shop and everything that goes with it. And so once I forgave her and said, well, you know what? It's not like in the 60s in your condition, you was reading Dr. Spock's book on how to raise a child. Okay. And so I accepted that. I forgave her. And now I started out cooking small. I started out with a crock pot, which was great.
Set it and forget it.
Yeah, yeah. But the crock pot is tricky, especially when it comes to seasoning, because I'm cooking is different layers. And so I remember once I was cooking some beans and they taste bland. And I went to my friends at the meeting, who in those meetings, everybody knows everything, of course.
Yep.
And so I asked them, I go, well, how, my beans are bland. They're like, well, put some garlic in it. Okay. And so I come home, put on my little apron with the crab that says kiss the cook, because I'm extreme. Yeah. And I'm sitting there chopping up garlic and onion, and I've put them in my beans. And next thing you know, my whole house smells like garlic. I'm eating garlic soup and it's coming out of my pores. And I go back to the meeting smelling like garlic. And they're like, what happened? I'm like, well, you told me put garlic in it. And they're like, well, how much garlic did you put in it? I go, I put one of those balls in it. And they're like, no, you know, now I know the difference between a bulb and a clove.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, big difference.
Yeah.
From the crock pot, I discovered HelloFresh. The next thing you know, I'm sauteing orange peels and all kinds of. And so, everything is a process. And I'm going through all of these things. And one of the things I discovered that because of the abuse that occurred in my childhood, and I blamed it on my mother, I come to realize that she did what she could with what she had. And so, in honor of her and me wanting to use it as a symbol of hurt people, I developed a nonprofit in her name called the Jeanette Jones Hapfield Foundation. In this way, and we're geared towards just helping out people discover what's really going on with homelessness.
Mm.
And so I have that going on. I have Brown Manor going on, and I'm just enjoying life. I have the privilege of being on shows like yours to discuss that there's more to being homeless than being homeless.
I
You
love it.
know,
That's so, that's a great thing to just to make that statement because so many people in the world are marginalized because of their homelessness. And people don't want to pay it. They put up a wall and they try to dehumanize it. And they forget these are human beings too. These are people like us. There's somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's daughter. And they're not just, they're dealing with an issue that is way more complicated than just being unhoused. It's a lot more, like you were saying. I love that program you're talking about. Sounds so interesting. We got to put a link to all these things at the end of your podcast so that people can look deeper into this stuff. Because I'm personally going to look into it because I just had a guest on that was uh, very much into helping homeless people, and he's going to really love what you're saying. I'm going to tell him to make sure he watches this. But you are onto something very, very good with this. I know that this problem is huge in the United States and in the world, so it's something we really need to put a little energy into, a lot more energy than we are now. But go ahead.
yeah, where I come to the conclusion because again, I have a PhD in vagrancy. Yeah, I
Doctorate.
I I lived out there for 23 years,
Yep.
and now I have a master's degree in nursing. And so I have knowledge from both worlds,
Right.
and I'm able to see things that other people can't. And what I do now is again, it's a complex issue, but it's not as complicated as we think it is. It's not as simple as we think it is, but
Right.
it's not as complicated as we think it is. A lot of people think it's more along the lines that, I mean, we can throw it in the category, yeah, we understand that being without house, we know what can cause that. We understand that, you might not have enough money, you don't have the income, we understand that. You might have a mental illness, we understand that. You may have a substance abuse problem, we understand that. There's even a small fragment of that population that has learning disabilities that they were raised by their parent and unable to take care of themselves. Then a parent passes away and we have a homeless person.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different elements, but the one thing that I focus on is that whole cognitive restructuring. You believe who you are by what you believe who you are.
See, one more time. Let me think about that.
You believe who you are by what you believe who you are.
Okay. So your
The
own
classic,
predisposition as far as what you think you are.
it's the thinking.
Yeah.
A classic example, you know what makes a physician good?
Go ahead.
because he believes he's a physician.
Yeah, no, that's a definitely a good thing to say. I can honestly say my experience with physicians, that's true.
You know what makes you know what makes a musician good?
Believing he's a good musician.
Because he knows he's a good musician.
I was just gonna say that getting a job out here is like people go, "How much do you charge?" And you have to go, "I believe I'm worth 250 an hour, please." And then you just hope that they agree.
Right, right. But once you get that solidified in your consciousness, that's who you are. You've already fortified yourself with the facts to prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt. I'm
I
I'm a
love
nurse.
that. That's good.
I'm a very good psychiatric nurse. I am. And I can solve a lot of different issues. And I can educate myself to get better at what I do because this is who I believe I am. When somebody's homeless, if you keep calling them a homeless person, that's what they're going to believe. And that's what they're going to do. A homeless person things.
You know, I heard a saying once that if, like, as far as how you treat people, a person said to me, if you call a dog by a certain name, the dog starts to answer. It's the same thing for people. It's just what you're saying. If you say that to them, well, they're going to think that's what they are.
Right. And they're going to behave in that aspect and get reinforced. So not only are they believing it, but all the external factors are reinforcing that fact to solidify that belief.
Yep, that's it. And it becomes more and more hard to shed it.
Right. But that's the whole philosophy behind Brown Manor once it's up and running. For one thing, there's only 10 people that's going to live in that 9,000 square foot mansion. And guess what? You live in a mansion. Okay. Period. You
Yep,
know,
I love it.
that's the whole thing. And you're an individual that just have ineffective coping skills. You're not a bad person. You just need to be educated more on how to do things better. That's the language we use, opposed to saying, you'll never get it, or you're a failure, or why did you do that wrong? It's like, no, I understand that sometimes it takes progress is a process.
Hmm.
And I reinforce approximations. You got up this morning, congratulations. Great job. You made your bed this morning. Good. Now that you know how to make your bed and you understand why, I'm going to reinforce that, but then you're going to start repeating that behavior all the time to get that reinforcement. And then I can fade that from saying good job all the time to at the end of the week, it's like you did super well.
Do your
And
patients come in and eventually like graduate to,
you get to stay a year. And within 1 year, it's not a program and it's not a shelter. It's your home. And that's what we want people to understand. Now, dealing with society and putting it together, they want to label it because unfortunately, funding is geared towards labels.
correct,
You
yeah.
know, you got a shelter for homeless people, we'll give you money. You have a home for people who are just learning how not to do ineffective coping skills. We don't have a program for that. We don't have funding for that. Okay, but that's what's needed. And so, setting up this example, now we can be able to have some form of communication so that we can at least get people to start speaking that language, and maybe we can start thinking different on how to solve this issue, because we're not even counting the true number of people that are homeless. We're not, there's a whole invisible population out there that's couch surfing in hotels, sleeping in their cars. They're only counting the person that they see laying on the streets.
Right,
And so
right.
you have the pre-homeless, those are about to be. And truth be told, a lot of people are just one paycheck away from being homeless.
That's exactly true about the USA right now. That's true.
I see it. And so part of what I want to do is I want to get in and educate those that are pre-homeless and let them know, okay, you lost your job being a CEO at a company for right now. Go work someplace where at least you can get hired. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make a bunch of money, but that's going to help you with your dignity and your self-worth.
A routine, give you some day-to-day balance. Yeah.
Yeah, because if not, you'll sit around and you'll get depressed. Once you get depressed, then what?
Spiral. Oh yeah, I've been there.
Exactly. And we're all gifted the same amount of time. That's a lifetime. Once it's over, it's over. So we just get to do this until then. And so in the meantime, I want to dedicate my time, my research, making connections with people getting them to understand that there's more to being homeless than being homeless.
I have a
Maybe,
question for you.
Yes.
Um, in this process, like, do you like visit this home often? Or like, are you like present in their lives?
Yeah, well, right now we're still structuring it. We're still going through the whole construction phase because, as I said, rebuilding an abandoned mansion takes a lot of money.
I bet.
Of course, yeah.
And so right now we just raised the funds because I had to redo the entire plumbing and sewer system. I didn't see that one coming. You know, I didn't see the city saying, well, even though you want to help people, you have to have permits and licenses, and you got to pay us a bunch of money to get all of that. I didn't see none of that.
Is
But
that stuff that you think God left out? And it was just sort of like, do you think you're pushed to that uh mission without knowing those details kind of intentionally?
yes, yes, because I'm supposed to learn patience somehow. I'm supposed to learn
Okay, yeah.
forgiveness somehow.
Uh-huh.
Right.
It's easy to say, okay, I'm patient when it comes to dealing with my patients because I work in a behavioral unit. I'm patient when it
Right.
comes to that. But what happens when you get blindsided? Are you ready for that? Are you ready to say, okay, society, even though I don't agree with you, I still have to jump through the hoops to get what you have so I can help other people? Yes, because in the meantime, no matter what I'm going through, God always gives me this little snippet that says you're on the right track. And so yes, I will be definitely in their lives. With our foundation, I set up the foundation as overseeing that house. And the beauty of it is once my expiration date comes, because we all have an expiration date, once it comes, the foundation and that house will still continue to move. If I can be there for everybody, I would, but it all depends on what God wants me to do. But the best I can do is to continue to do podcasts, continue to be honest. Somebody wants me to speak at some place. That's one way I can raise revenue. I'll go speak. I'll do whatever it takes to try to get at least one person to think a little different. Just one at a time. And if anybody has doubt, I'm proof in the pudding. I mean,
Yeah.
I used to eat cheeseburgers out of a dumpster. I used to be a drug addict, and now I have a license to prescribe medication.
To do something that you never would have done back then, for sure.
Never, never. I didn't think I'd be a nurse practitioner.
I know.
That wasn't in the cards, you know. But
Shows
it
you what
is
you
what
know
it
about the
is.
cards.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now I just sit down and I'm grateful to be at the table to play.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things we talk about on Out of the Blue, because we're talking about a higher power, and you have such a strong, really incredibly tight relationship with your higher power, chatting with him and getting immediate answers. I feel that it's very, I don't doubt it for 1 minute. I know you're doing that. But in the out of the blue world, for a lot of people out there who aren't devoted, found any religion, they just want to know what's going on. They're lost in a lot of ways. The things that come out of the blue are like when you talk to, what someone would say, when you thought, it came out of the blue for you to sell so you get cash in your 401ks and go out to Ohio. That was an out of the blue thing that you did, almost listening to God. Because I feel like when these things come from out of the blue, I mean, everybody we've spoken to, when I always ask them, what do you think out of the blue is? Is it something, what is it? They always come back to this, it's got to be something like a higher power, God, whatever you think. And that's what I think it is. We don't own our life. We do have an expiration date, and I love the fact that we don't own the money, nothing. We don't own material things at all, really. And
Right.
and it's all from everything. We're the most amazing things that came out of the blue. Us, people,
Hmm.
humans. I mean, this is really what the most amazing story of all that in a bag of chips. You're amazing, Anthony. I can't believe I'm so fortunate. We're so fortunate to have you on. And you
Oh, you
came
think
out of the
this?
blue to us.
I was gonna say you think this came, like out of the blue?
Yeah,
It's
you came
I
out of the blue to us because I mean, we started it, and you were one of the first people that reached out to us. And I said, like, well, this is special. I knew it was something special. The minute I saw your name and I read your thing, I said, this is my higher power sending me something very important, not just for me, but for, for feeding the sheep. 'Cause that's what it's all
Hmm.
about. We got a lot of sheep out there to feed.
Right. And it's cool because we have the hands to feed them.
That's right. I'm
You know.
grateful for that. The opportunity to do it that's what I say in the morning. Like I say, first thing in the morning, I definitely talk to my higher power. And first thing I say is I'm grateful that I'm here.
Hmm.
I have another
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah. And I think that's really important for a lot of people because we forget to understand the small things that mean a lot. When people wake up in the morning, they don't realize that, hey, I'm awake.
No
That's a
small thing,
gift.
man. That's a
That,
huge thing.
that's the most important gift you can get. After that, everything else is
It's
a
all
bonus.
gravy after that.
Yeah, everything else is a bonus. Then you throw in the little small things like, okay, well, my bladder still works and I have a restroom. Whoa.
And the toilet
You
flushes.
know, right. And I got toilet paper. It's like, what the heck? Because during COVID, a lot of people didn't have toilet paper.
Yeah,
Now we got plenty of it. So be grateful. You
right.
know, and it's all the stuff, and like you say, and a bag of chips. And I continue to fortify myself because life does get lifey. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have the privilege of walking around smiling all the time. Life gets lifey, but I'm
Life,
able to.
one more time. Life gets lifey.
Yes,
I
life
like
gets lifey,
that's something. We're
but
gonna probably put that as a highlight for you.
you,
Life
you
gets lifey.
you can have that one. But the fact of the matter is that I'm able to have that peace and comfort to navigate life as it presents itself. And that's what's important. You know, I had the privilege of being out here and it snowed, and I'm from California, and it snowed like snow. And so I go out with the only thing I know, which is a regular coal shovel, and I'm scooping up my driveway. My neighbor is like, that's not the proper equipment. I'm like, okay. Then she came over and she brings me her shovel. I was like, okay, now I know. Things like that mean a lot to me. Things like that. I have a jacket I could put on. I was homeless. The jacket was my blanket and everything else. Now I have different clothes. And so I'm winning no matter what, because again, I know my expiration date's coming eventually. And I get to say, I literally lived on a park bench to Park Avenue. That's the name of my book, too. Quick, cheap plug from Park Bench to Park Avenue.
Nice.
Right.
That's clever.
But I literally got to do that. I mean,
Available on Amazon.
yes, available on Amazon. Yeah, and it all goes, everything I do goes to Brown Manor. Everything I do. When God says it's time for me to come home, which is going to be great because I don't have to pay taxes anymore. At least I can at least I can say I got to do a lot of stuff. I got to party like there's no tomorrow. I mean, I got to savage my body and I made it.
Oh boy.
And yeah, and
As I told you earlier, I did play music for a while and definitely can relate to that exact statement. And I am
hmm
also very grateful that I'm here after all that uh, partying,
yeah,
I'd say.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so
there's something to following your heart's whims in a sense, but you know, in moderation, of course. It
yeah,
seems.
or you can always just throw content. I told myself I'm at the point in life if I felt that I just wanted to get a minivan or probably a VW bus and just take off and cruise, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. If that's what if I decide I want to leave all of the stuff behind, I'm gonna do it. Why? Because God set me up in a way in which I'm retired, so I have a pension. So no matter what, I'll get a check every month.
That helps for sure.
Yeah, and it's
You,
like,
I hope it's a VW bus
of course, of
because
course.
you know why, right? Because me and my son both Vernon West.
Oh,
We're
okay.
VWs.
Oh, nice.
So
And
we
so,
actually did a band together called the VW Bus Band.
oh, really?
Not
Yeah.
sponsored.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that came out of the blue.
Yeah.
And also my the latest book I just finished last night that I wrote about a little talking intellectual bunny he has a VW bus that has actually VW on the bus. And so that's really fascinating. But life is good, man. We learn to live the minutes if we can't live the days. And that's super important because we get so caught up in yesterday and tomorrow is like we blow today. And all we really have, in all honesty, is now. That's
That,
it.
that is
You
so
know.
right, man. That's profound and it's so true. All we
hmm
have is the moment, and if you get lost in the future or the past, you're missing it.
hmm Yeah. Who was it? I think it was Kansas. Dust in the wind.
Yeah,
There's a little thing that says only for a moment and a moment's gone.
yeah, yeah. I
You
did a
know, we're
show.
just
I did a show with Kansas, as a matter of fact.
okay, yeah,
I
and that's all
love
we
those
are, is just
guys. They were great guys.
dust in the wind. So having said that, having knowing that, then what are we gonna do with life now? Now that we're armed with the facts, what are we gonna do? You know, I'm gonna help out our brothers and sisters in the streets, continue to give because that's what I'm supposed to do, and just enjoy life. Even if it's just to sit down with somebody and go, you know what? I understand what you're going through. I understand, I can tell, and we can have a comfortable conversation. If you want money because you have an addiction, let's talk about that. Am I going to give you money for your addiction? No. But I will feed you. That I will do. I will talk to I don't care. We can meet every day and talk about something different. And I don't mind. I don't mind at all because that's what it's all about. Somebody help me, and I want to be able to help somebody else. Because in the end, once I go through that transition after my expiration date, where am I going to go? I'm hoping that there's the heaven that they all talked about, and I get to kick it with God and go, hey, dude, check it out. You seen it. It's like, can I at least have a recliner or something while I'm chilling? You know, and then
Well,
and
that's
yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, and so I get to smile, I get to be happy, I get to be content in my moments, and that's priceless.
That is priceless. Well,
That's
Anthony
priceless.
Brown, I tell you right now, out of the blue, we're very grateful to have you in our out of the blue family. And I think
I have one
Vernon has
question.
one more question before go ahead, Vern.
Yeah, because man, I gotta go kind of soon, but I could definitely like pick your brain for a while because I appreciate how you're like making this all very like practical. Because like it's tough. I think my age group, I live in LA right now. There's a lot of people that are agnostic or the other one, I forget what it's called at the moment,
Atheist?
atheist. Yeah. Um, and there's we grew up I grew up pretty spiritual. There's a lot of societal pressure to sort of discredit this God's talk. I personally do believe in God and like I have a spirituality, but I do kind of struggle with like fully being confident, honestly. So like my question is, and this is for everyone, not just me, like what kind of advice would you give people that will allow them to enter into that like that profound like clear space or get as close to that as possible where you can hear some sort of message that feels like it's from a higher power and it's not just your thoughts kind of going like how would you advise someone who maybe just likes to meditate to get into that headspace to be open to these out of the blue moments
Yeah,
um
how would you do it?
or for for someone who hasn't necessarily been or is not aware of their like a deep traumatic experience that can rock them to their core and then like clear up all their consciousness. Is there a way to get there without doing that intent like getting that intense level of like awakening, or is that
Yes.
are they like tied together?
No. Rule number one, okay? Learn how to be honest with yourself. Okay. Once you're honest with yourself, then you'll start believing what you're seeing. Rule number two, ask, even if you have to ask specifically, ask specific. And when you get a specific answer, be honest with yourself. You know, I asked God to prove himself and the trees turned pastel. And I didn't question it. And the reason why I waited so long to ask that question, because I had to have 2 years of absence of mind altering stuff for me to know that what I see is real. And then the continuation of all of this stuff happened. I mean, so be
Mm.
honest with yourself. Even if you have to say, okay, look, I know I know water is wet. How do you know water is wet? Because I can reinforce that. Okay, now ask yourself a question. Now believe in what you see and be honest about it. Don't try to push it aside. Now that's just coincidental. Okay, well then that's fine, you know. But if you're able to be honest with yourself, and I think that's a huge question for people to even do. It's like, can I be
Yeah.
honest with me?
Really, that is it pretty much.
And if you
Right.
can, you will see beyond the normality of things. You will see it. And when you see it, go, okay, that's what that is. And then continue to build on it. If that's what that is, then what about this? And next thing you know, you'll come to realize that everything is little puzzle pieces just swirling around. And once in a while, they'll connect. It's like, oh, okay, it might not stay, but they will connect and you'll get a better understanding as long as you're honest.
Mm.
Now, some people will ask for certain things like, God, I want a car, and you get a job instead. Okay, great. How do you think you're going to pay for the car? So things
Right.
like
You got to listen, but that honesty is key because you have to listen. That answer might not be exactly what you think it should be.
right,
Right.
right. It might not. I mean, I'm when God told me to come here and sell everything and come out here and do this project, like how I'm going to do it. Now I turn around. I work at a hospital. I have a I'm a nurse practitioner. I own my house. I own my car. I have no bills per se. That's how I'm going to do it, you know? And again, I don't have to complete it. I just have to do it. This only might be just my part. I don't know. But I do it to the best of my ability and I'm comfortable with doing it. Therefore, I'm on the right track. So as far as people meditating, meditation is perfect. Meditation is perfect because all you're doing is just removing all external stimuli so you can feel the truth of what's happening in a natural order.
Mm.
But believe it, because when you get those little vibrations and all of that stuff, believe what you feel. Be honest with yourself.
Boy, let's
That's
end it right there. Thank you so much for this. It's amazing, amazing podcast, Anthony Brown. You're a special person. You really are. And I'm very,
Absolutely, man.
very, very grateful to have made your acquaintance. I want to stay friends. I hope we can talk more in the future, just even man to man on the phone and stuff. Because I really think, yeah, I feel like you're in my tribe. I suppose, we're in the same kind of, I'm in the same world you are really spiritually. I feel very much your kin. So, you gave me so much inspiration today. How'd you feel, Vern? Same thing, I bet, right?
Great. Yeah, I mean, this is clearly like two people whose jobs are in their faith in something higher being drawn to each other. Like,
Oh, thank you. I
seems
think that's accurate.
this is an example of what we're talking about. It's pretty cool.
So I'm going to say thank you, Anthony, once again, and maybe we'll check back with you on
Yeah.
Out of the Blue for another episode in sometime in the future, because we'll keep tabs on you and the brown what's it called? The
Brown
Brown
Manor.
Manor.
Brown Manor. Okay, yeah, I mean, everybody should look that up online too, right? The Brown Manor's
Yeah,
online,
it's all over the place. I mean,
and your
it's
and your
you
wonderful
know,
book.
Park Bench to Park Avenue. One man's journey out of homelessness.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for this wonderful episode today, and thank you everybody for tuning in with us. My co-host is Vernon, my son, Vernon the third, and we especially thank you, the listeners, for tuning in and sharing your valuable time with us. We know how valuable it is. So thank you so much, Anthony, and I really, really, we are part of the Out of the Blue family, and I'm totally honored to have you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Okay, good night,
Thanks so
everybody.
much, Anthony.
Okay, you guys have a great day.
You too.
You
Bye-bye,
too.
everybody. Out of the Blue, the podcast, hosted by me, Vernon West, co-hosted by Vernon West III. edited by Joe Gallo. Music and logo by Vernon West III. Have an Out of the Blue story of your own you'd like to share? Reach us at info@outoftheblue-thepodcast.org. Subscribe to Out of the Blue on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and on our website, outoftheblue-thepodcast.org. You can also check us out on Patreon for exclusive content.